Welcome inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where preseason camp is underway for the Buckeyes as Ohio State got back on the field for its first of 25 preseason practices. An exciting day for sure for Ohio State football fans, as some fans got to be out here, watch the practice today along with us in the media. But the day ending on a damp note as Eddrick Houston, projected starting defensive tackle, left practice late in the practice with an apparent lower leg injury. Ryan Day hadn't gotten an update yet as of the time of his press conference to end practice. But, Andy, we've been talking all offseason about how big of a concern defensive tackle depth is. Ohio State cannot afford to lose Eddrick Houston.
Yeah, I would say that, especially, again, we've talked about the defensive tackle depth, the lack thereof. It seemed, I obviously don't know exactly what happened on the play, but Eddrick was down on the field for a while. Looked to be in some pain. Trainers came, helped him up. He wasn't putting weight on his right leg as he limped off the field, or putting very little weight on it. Had obviously something wrong with there. If nothing else, it's going to take him out, you would expect, for a few camp practices at the very least, but could be, don't know the extent of the severity, don't want to speculate on it, obviously. Ryan Day will have updates as they come, but we heard about Will Smith Jr. at Big Ten Media Days, and Sonny Styles called him an absolute baller. Ryan Day brought him up. He's going to get opportunities here early in preseason camp, and he's going to have to step up. If Eddrick is somehow compromised to start the season, especially, you're going to need him to take that next step if he's the guy that's next in line, but also Jason Moore, Tywone Malone especially. And if Will Smith Jr. is your starting three-tech we talked about before, he feels like the only real good option potentially with the right molding to back up Caden McDonald at nose guard. If he's now starting at three-tech, who's going to be able to relieve Caden at nose? So definitely a position group where Ohio State is probably the thinnest coming into preseason camp. The position group you would least like to see them have an injury at. And unfortunately, day one of preseason camp, they have.
Seems like this is the way it happens. I mean, you think back to last year, they lose Josh Simmons. I mean, we talked about it all offseason last year. Who was the one player they could least afford to lose? It was Josh Simmons. They lose Josh Simmons. Then after you lose Josh Simmons, of course, the last thing that you can afford to lose is another starting offensive lineman. You lose Remington Trophy winner Seth McLaughlin. Ohio State was able to overcome that. Now we'll see if they have to overcome this. I mean, we've seen injuries before early in camp. People were talking about Tyleik Williams a couple years ago. It was kind of a similar thing. Left practice the first day. It's like, oh no, did Ohio State just lose Tyleik? He ended up being fine, was back on the field week one. So we don't want to speculate too heavily, but the reality is, Eddrick's a guy they can ill afford to lose. And if Eddrick has to miss any amount of time, you talked about Will Smith Jr., but I think Jason Moore, Tywone Malone are two guys you shine the spotlight on. The pressure is on those guys. Those are guys who are both now in their third year in the program, Tywone in his fifth year of college football. Those are the guys, if you're Larry Johnson right now, you're telling you guys got to step up. This is your time. It's now or never for you. This is an opportunity for guys like Jason Moore and Tywone Malone to show what they have. They got to take advantage of that opportunity. If not, then you might be looking at a guy like Jarquez Carter, the freshman, to see can he make a quick move up the depth chart. The door is wide open for every defensive tackle on the roster right now. We've talked about, Ohio State has really good depth at defensive end, might have to get creative there, especially in pass rush situations. I think the likelihood of us seeing rushman packages, defensive ends kicking inside in pass rush situations certainly just went up, because Eddrick's the guy, if healthy, you would expect him to be their top interior pass rusher among the defensive tackles. Now, if we want to shift to some good news, I would say I thought there was a lot of promise from that defensive end group today. The guy who really stood out to me was Beau Atkinson. In his first practice as a Buckeye, he knocked down several passes, had at least one sack. They're not true sacks because the quarterbacks are not live, but he had at least one play that was whistled dead as a sack. Just watching him, I just kept noticing him in the backfield, play after play, and that's a really good sign for a guy who's in his first practice as a Buckeye.
Absolutely. We talked about before, this is someone who comes in with proven production. They wanted to have that guy that they knew could be an anchor for this defensive end room. But talked to Ryan Day afterward. He talked about how much Beau Atkinson has been standing out too. Also brought up how C.J. Hicks, how Keanu Jackson Jr., how Caden Curry has stepped up as leaders. It was good to hear C.J. Hicks's name in that mix, I think, for him making that position change, entering his last year as a five-star prospect. But yes, watching Beau Atkinson today, absolutely an impressive first day of preseason camp from him. For me, a couple other guys who stood out in the receiver room. Mylan Graham, I know how good this top three core receivers is. I know Ohio State hasn't rotated a ton at the position in recent years, but man, it's going to be hard to keep number 5 off the field this year, I really think. I loved what I saw from Mylan in the spring, obviously had the big spring game. Today, again, just the speed in the open field, the route running has taken huge leaps since he got here. Credit to Brian Hartline, who always does such a great job developing his receivers technically, as is well known at this point. Mylan Graham had an amazing day, I thought. And Jeremiah Smith, man, we talk about him all the time, but it's for a reason. The man came out, and Ryan Day said at Big Ten Media Days that he was bigger, faster, stronger than last year. The stronger part was kind of easy to believe because he's going from his freshman to sophomore year. He's a dedicated weight room guy. But the speed, it really did feel a little bit different. Watching him go through route running drills with the receivers and Brian Hartline and weaving in and out of the cones, doing the corner routes, doing the post routes, the various drills they were working on there. Watching him in team drills and just seeing how much of a physical monster he is right now. Lincoln Kienholz had a pretty nice throw to him today through double coverage that Jeremiah just scooped right through the defense and took off and probably might have housed it if it were a real game. He's gotten better physically, and you can see it with your eyes, and it's insane to think about because he was so already a physical freak as a freshman. But newsflash, everybody, expect a big year from Jeremiah Smith.
You mentioned Lincoln Kienholz. I know everybody wants to hear our thoughts on the quarterback. I can't really say that I come out of day one with a big takeaway on the quarterback competition. It was all split teamwork today. We didn't really see a depth chart. You had Julian and Lincoln taking the reps with the ones in their respective groups, but the first team offensive line was split up, first team receivers were split up. So I didn't come out today saying one guy was clearly better than the other. I do think you mentioned Lincoln. I think he had a couple of nice throws. I think Julian got better as the practice progressed. I thought Julian, I saw some nice stuff from him in terms of making quick decisions, getting the ball out of his hand quick. Maybe you still want to see a little bit more of the deep stuff than we've seen from him. But overall, I come out of today feeling like it was a solid first day for both guys. Don't know that it was a day where either one of them really made a big move in the quarterback competition. What did you think?
Well, yeah, to me, similar thoughts to you. If you had to make me choose one who had a better day today, I would go with Lincoln just because, to me, Julian had some pretty clear struggles early on, through an interception to Davison Igbinosun, which, by the way, another guy I should say really stands out physically when you look at him, man. Davison Igbinosun these days looks like his arms are sculpted out of bronze. It's like muscles on muscles. It was crazy. We're watching him run onto the field earlier. But Julian said, through the interception to Davison, overthrew Sam Williams-Dixon on a wide-open wheel route in that same period of practice. They were doing kind of a 7-on-7 red zone thing. Tight spaces. He completed a few nice checkdowns, open balls to some people, but just didn't have that rhythm really in the early part of practice. And team portion, I thought he did well. I thought he and Carnell are developing some chemistry. It looks like hit him on a nice corner route, hit him on a nice slant route. Did some other things in that team period where he looked better. I thought overall, like you said, it's hard to evaluate quarterbacks when half the time we were watching them, they were on the other side of the field from us. But for me, to my eye, I thought it was an okay day from both guys. No one won the competition today. If I had to give the slight edge to somebody, it would be Lincoln, just because I thought he was a little more consistent throughout practice, had that nice throw to Jeremiah I just mentioned. But still feels like they're keeping it open as we roll through the early part of camp here.
Two other guys I think worth mentioning. Devin Sanchez, a guy who, of course, came in with a lot of hype this spring. Maybe not like quite the spring we expected from Devin. Didn't lose his black stripe right away like Jeremiah did a year ago. But I thought he had a good first day at camp. There was one play that stood out in my mind. Julian threw a nice deep ball to Carnell, and Devin had really good coverage, broke up that pass. So I think it was a good first day of camp for the freshman cornerback. And then Epi Sitanilei is a guy who really caught my eye in his first practice as a Buckeye. I think he's a guy that maybe we've looked at as kind of more of a developmental project. And he's still a guy needs to put on some size, was mostly going up against backup offensive linemen today. But he was a guy, every time he was out there, you see him, he's got the long hair, number 44. You kind of think, oh, JT Tuimoloau. He's not as big as JT, but you kind of can't help but think of it when you see the number and the hair and the position he plays. And I just kept noticing him every time he was out there making plays in the backfield, had a couple sacks, blew up a couple other plays in the backfield. So he's a guy that's on my radar a little more today than he was coming in.
Oh, yeah. I think he had a standout day. For me, too, I think the secondary just as a whole, there was, especially before they moved on to the indoor and it was full team drills and it was kind of a mix of who won, who lost. I thought the secondary kind of had the upper hand on the receivers, the passing game there. We expect an elite secondary from Ohio State this year. Another note I want to point out today, a lot of nickel from Caleb Downs. A lot of nickel. So is there a plan to maybe involve him more in packages where he's in that position and then you have Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford back deep? I think that's on the table. As someone else pointed out to me, and I'm sure you as a Patriots fan will remember Patrick Chung kind of playing that role where he was moving into nickel for Matt Patricia defenses. It just kind of makes you think. And Caleb Downs, we know how successful he can be playing around the box, how physical he can be against the run game, how he can read and react in those positions where he's able to play a little closer to the line of scrimmage. Very interesting how much nickel Caleb Downs is playing.
You could put Caleb Downs at defensive tackler. He'd probably do a good job. I mean, the guy is such a special talent. Him and Jeremiah, you could put him at any position, and I would have confidence in their ability. But certainly a lot to monitor here going forward. Ohio State will be back on the practice field tomorrow. We will be back here. Lots more coverage to come on 11warriors.com and 11 Warriors YouTube channel. For now, he's Andy Anders. I'm Dan Hope. Thanks for joining us.